Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 878, August the 25th, 2019, Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Boy oh boy, just what a beautiful weekend we're having this weekend. We've just been through a really, I guess maybe 5-6 week long real heat wave, a lot of humidity here in the southern Ohio Valley. And boy, it was just great. Wake up the Saturday morning, the heat wave had broken, it was cool. Sunny, just beautiful day today. Beautiful day. It's going to be on Sunday, and then I think next week we get back to the humidity and the rain and all that stuff. But at least ways a reprieve for a couple of days. It's just some beautiful weather, and hopefully many of you are getting the same break as well. Don't forget that today is when you get your vote in for Dumbass of the Week. So make sure that you get your vote for Dumbass of the Week in the comments section of this video. And remember that I typically go through and check Dumbass of the Week voting somewhere between 8:30 and 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday evening. So if you want to get your vote in, try to get your vote in before 8:30 on Sunday evening's video Eastern Standard Time, because that's when I'm going through and counting up the votes. And sometimes I do miss a vote. Last week I missed my beloved Fern. That's right, our dear friend Fern, been with me for a long time. I remember Fern from literally TowerGate videos when I think it was like still in like 2 digits. That's how long Fern's been a sub to my channel. And I missed Fern last week and I feel really bad about that. So anyway, so I apologize to Fern. I already did in the comment section, I think, before. But anyway, sometimes that happens, and sometimes I guess you know how YouTube is. It's kind of strange, and how comments post. And I'll generally check 2 different ways. I'll click on my little bell, and that generally gives me all the comments for my video. But I'll check by going back to my channel, and then I'll click on my videos, and then I'll click on that video that I want to look at the comments on, and I'll go through that as well. And I always put a check, or I always click on a thumbs up on the comment, just so I know when I'm going through them all that I've already gotten that vote. So that's kind of how I do it, and it's not a perfect science, but I do the best I can to get everybody's vote counted for like several weeks. It was like several weeks went by where I kept missing Hay's vote and trying to figure out why that was happening. So anyway, I do the best I can, and but just keep in mind I do check the comment section about 8:30, somewhere between 8:30 and 9. To be on the safe side, try to get your comment in by 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Sunday videos, and hopefully your vote will be counted. Thanks so much for that, participating in that, by the way. So anyway, don't forget your vote for Dumbass of the Week. A lot of good contenders this week, and certainly I think Joe Biden right now is probably leading the pack, because just the sheer number of stupid things that come out of his mouth, But Ocasio-Cortez, she had some things this week. So Nancy Pelosi, of course, is on the board. So we have quite a few, people who are in the running. So I'll be looking forward to tallying the votes. Okay, let's go ahead and get to the news of the day. Anyway, with this recent revelation by Patrick Byrne, again, it's hard to understand exactly, where he's coming from on all this, but I think based on the interviews that I've seen with him, obviously it appears to me, it looks like it was another attempted setup or frame up of Trump. In this particular case, it looks like they were trying to somehow get this Maria Butina in the same room with Donald Trump Jr. So it looks like Trump Jr. was the target of this frame up that would involve Maria Butina. Now, how this CEO of Overstock.com figures into that, I don't know, because it was never allowed to really play itself out the way I think that they wanted it to. So it's hard to say, but it looks pretty much like all the other frame-up type things that we saw. So for those of you who have not been following my TowerGate videos for a long time and are not exactly sure what I'm talking about, just let me go through and recap some of the, all the frame-ups that we know about. Remember, there's probably attempted frame-ups that we do not know about, ones that were unsuccessful. So there may be another dozen that just didn't pan out or didn't work out, or that we haven't discovered yet. But let's just talk about the ones that we absolutely know for sure were frame-ups conducted by the corrupt deep state against the Trump campaign. So let's go back to the earliest one, which goes back to late 2014, 2015. Michael Flynn would have been the very first one targeted for one of these setups. And that occurred, again, just where most of these things occurred, in London. He was invited to London to attend this conference. And we know that the person, and the really three people that were involved in the Michael Flynn setup were, of course, Stefan Halper, Christopher Steele, and Richard Breedlove, this former GCHQ head. So they invite Flynn to London, and they make sure that they seat him right next to Svetlana Lakova. And naturally, they're seated next to each other, having conversation, just friendly conversation, discussion of things. Obviously, she's an academic and an expert in Russian studies. She's of Russian descent, but she's a British citizen. And, Flynn's just a nice guy, and he's talking about foreign policy with her, I'm sure, and just things, in a general nature. And this was all, but the whole thing was set up just to make sure that they could have Flynn sit next to Lakova. Apparently Halper was the one who made that happen. Christopher Steele was very, very close, sitting either behind them or close to them. Probably was had some sort of a listening device that was picking up their conversation. And of course Stefan Halper there passes this to Breedlove, and then it finds its way to the FBI and to the State Department, the National Security Advisor, which would have been Susan Rice. And at that point, that was how the frame-up was set up on Michael Flynn. It began right there, just like most of these, in London, and it was really instigated by Stefan Halper, the fat man. That was the number one frame-up that we know about. Then we get the frame-up of Carter Page. Of course, Carter Page, they approach him because they know he's an energy executive. He's worked for 4 years in Moscow for one of the big banks over there for the Russian energy division. He has contacts with lots of Russians, obviously. He was former naval intelligence. He had worked with the FBI, and now we find out with intelligence agencies for a very long time, which makes a lot of us skeptical, including myself, about exactly, which side of the coin that Page is on. And I'm still not totally sure, but working from the narrative that we have now is that Carter Page was set up. Whether he was involved in that, allowed himself to be set up, was playing the role, or whether he was an innocent in all this and they were taking advantage of him, it's not really clear now. Hopefully it will be, but all in all, whether it was a fake setup or a real setup, it was the same thing. He's invited to London, and there they get this information on him, and they start pursuing that, and so he becomes the second victim, again, Stefan Halper involved in that. Okay, then we get, here back in the States, we have this interesting situation with Michael Caputo, who was working on the Trump campaign at that time. He is approached by this individual who goes by one of three aliases. This particular alias he was using was Hank Greenberg. Now, Hank Greenberg is actually a Russian dude. He is a Russian, convicted criminal. He's actually done like 13, 14 some odd years in prison in Russia for various types of crimes, including violent crimes, by the way. He's a bad guy. But what's unusual about this guy Greenberg with his other two aliases is that he's also some sort of an FBI informant. And we know that he was allowed to enter this country over a period of decades, over a dozen times, on a special type of visa that you only get for FBI informants. It's a special type of visa only for FBI informants. It only allows you to enter the country for a set time that they put on the form, just so you can conduct some sort of work for the FBI when you're here in the States. So he had received, over a period of a dozen or so years, I think it was 13, but don't quote me on that. But it's a number around that number. And so this guy, Hank Greenberg, the alias, approaches Caputo and offers him dirt on Hillary Clinton. and he's not too interested. He's busy with other things in the campaign. It's not really the area that Caputo would have anything to do with for what he was doing in the campaign, and so he blows Greenberg off. Greenberg approaches him again about 6 weeks later, at which point Caputo has now finished the work that he was doing on the Trump campaign, and now he's no longer really even working in any type of a capacity officially for the Trump campaign. He's done with his type of work, and now he's just a supporter of the president, and he's just, himself, right? So he's not really even affiliated with the Trump campaign anymore. So he tells Greenberg, he said, look, I'm not even on the Trump campaign team anymore. I'm just back to, my normal life. And although I still support the president, but, you're really talking to the wrong guy. But if you want to talk to someone, maybe he'd be interested in talking to you. I don't know. But here's my friend Roger Stone. Here's his phone number. Why don't you give him a call? Roger Stone, of course, is down in Florida. So this guy, Greenberg, calls Stone, and Stone says, yeah, let's meet up for lunch. I'll be more than happy to talk to you. So they meet up. Greenberg approaches Stone with the same basic line. He's got access to dirt on Hillary, and apparently this dirt is going to come from official government people, government agencies, people who actually work for the government, have access to these damaging information. He can get access to it, and he's wanting to know if Stone would like to pass this along to the Trump campaign to see if Trump will be interested. And of course, he drops a big dollar figure on Stone for the information, something in the neighborhood of like $500,000 or something. And Stone, of course, laughs at Greenberg and says, you got to be kidding me. Donald Trump wouldn't pay a single penny for dirt on Hillary Clinton. He doesn't need to. There's a mountain of dirt on Hillary Clinton. He doesn't have to pay a penny for it, nor would he ever. That's just not, you don't know Donald Trump. That's just not Donald Trump. He's not paying a penny for dirt on Hillary Clinton. So thank you very much, but your offer is ridiculous. Thanks a lot. Have a good life. And that's pretty much the end of the attempted contacts by Greenberg, as far as we know, into the Trump campaign. Then, of course, we get the first attempted setup of and frame up of Papaglopoulos. He's invited to London by Stefan Halper, the Fat Man, under the guise that he's going to write a research paper about energy in the Mediterranean and the Middle East. And so Papaglopoulos takes the bait. He comes over. Then he's offered a position at the London School of International Law, which is just full of ex-spies, as we all know. And there he runs into literally a half a dozen different spies. And that's when Avender Sambai, one of the spies, tells Papaglopoulos he has to go to, this is shortly after they find out that he's been given a job on the Trump team. He's going to be leaving the London Center of International Law. And they say, hey, before you go, you got to go meet this guy in Italy. He's the man. He can introduce you to a lot of people. And that turns out to be Mifsud. So Papaglopoulos thinks, okay, sure. He goes to Italy. He meets Mifsud. And now we find out that it was Vincenzo Scotti, a former intelligence official and politician in Italy, high-level politician, who was running Mifsud. And Mifsud was told, of course, to lure Papaglopoulos in and to connect him with Russians, specifically Mr. Timoviv. And it appears now that Vincenzo Scotti was also the one who activated Timoviv and put him into the loop. So here we have Papaglopoulos then. He has this conversation with Mifsud. They exchange information. Papaglopoulos goes back to London, is preparing to leave London. Then along comes Mifsud. He comes over to London with this woman who's supposedly Putin's niece. Now we know that it wasn't Putin's niece. He doesn't even have a niece. This was just a student at Link campus where Mifsud is a part-time sort of teacher, one of the founders of that organization. It's where they train spies, Western spies, and various people like that. And so Mifsud at this luncheon in London, that's where he drops this information on Papaglopoulos that the Russians have dirt on Hillary. This is followed shortly thereafter, about a week later, by an attempt by Stefan Halper to get the information out of Papaglopoulos in London. But Papaglopoulos smells a rat. He clams up, doesn't talk. Halper angrily leaves the restaurant, but it appears that that conversation was likely recorded, and that's probably one of the things that we're going to get to hear is the conversation between, or read the transcript of, the conversation between Halper and Papaglopoulos. So then Halper leaves. He's all upset. He leaves behind his honeypot, who tries to seduce Papaglopoulos. That doesn't work either, and so Papaglopoulos is out of there. The next thing you know, Alexander Down the Hatch Downer pops up, and he has this this sort of short and not very friendly meeting with Papaglopoulos over a drink, and it's allegedly in this meeting where Papaglopoulos is alleged to have told Downer that the Russians have dirt on Hillary Clinton, in which case Downer violates all procedure. Instead of alerting Five Eyes Intelligence to his home country, Australia, he goes directly to the embassy in London, and he gives this information to an American State Department official, who then passes it up the chain, and it makes its way back to the States, to the FBI. And this is what is used to launch Operation Crossfire Hurricane. Then the second attempt, frame up, on Papaglopoulos comes when he goes to Israel. He's lured over there, and he's told that there's some sort of a business deal that this man, who now we know is a spy, Mr. Tawil, Charles Tawil, gets Papaglopoulos to believe he's got some sort of a business deal going, and he wants Papaglopoulos as a consultant. They're going to pay him this really nice monthly retainer, and Tawil even drops $10,000 in cash on Papaglopoulos, and of course that was a frame-up. Papaglopoulos was supposed to get on a plane, come back to the States with the 10 grand, where the FBI was going to be waiting for him at the airport. They were going to bust him with the 10 grand. But Papaglopoulos, again, thinks something's fishy, and so he leaves the 10 grand back in Greece with his lawyer in Greece. But they still hit Papaglopoulos at the airport, search all his bags, are looking for the 10 grand. They can't find it, so it messes up their plot again, and they're forced to badger and harass Papaglopoulos and give him the hot light treatment and the intimidation treatment for a period of hours until they can finally trip him up and get him in him failing the memory test about when he first met Mifsud. He said that he met Mifsud before he joined the Trump team, when in fact it was after. That was, of course, what they used to get Papaglopoulos. That's the best that they could get, because the other two attempts at framing him, he smelled the rat and didn't play. So anyway, those are the other frame-ups that occurred. And then, of course, now we have this story from Patrick Byrne, the former CEO Overstock.com, who's now coming out, and it certainly makes it sound like that they were, again, trying to do the frame-up on him, use him to do a frame-up, and it appears that Trump Jr. would have been the target, because he says that they were trying to, they knew that there was going to be this meeting, or they were trying to set up a meeting with Maria Butina, which was going to be with Trump Jr. for about an hour. It's on the same weekend as they were having some sort of a Southern conservative conference. And Trump Jr. was going to be there, and Butina was going to get an hour of time with him. And the FBI, of course, knew all this. They're telling Patrick Byrne that they know all this, and they just want to let it happen. They want to let this happen. So there was another attempt of a frame-up on Trump Jr. And then, of course, we have probably the most famous of all the attempted frame-ups was the meeting at Trump Tower, which we now know was obviously, again, a setup. And it appears to involve multiple characters. Obviously, Confusion GPS, Glenn Simpson. They brought in a couple other actors. Maria Vetselnitskaya, the Russian lawyer. Obviously, Mr. Akhmechan was involved in this. It appears that John McCain may have been involved in this setup as well. Could be others. But, of course, this was an attempt. In this particular frame-up was a little unusual in the sense that there was no real damaging information that was going to be passed to Trump Jr. It appears that the only thing that they really wanted to accomplish was just to have the meeting happen. Just to have it happen. just to be able to say that there was this Russian lawyer who was able to get this meeting with Trump Jr. and Kushner and Manafort, and then they could use that to propagandize that, and so it will be like some added evidence to all the other things that they had, which was what they were trying to do, is put together a bunch of tiny little events that really meant nothing, make them much larger than what they really were, and try to tie all them together into this sort of Trump-Russia collusion narrative. So these are basically the frame-ups that we know about. And if we know about these frame-ups, there's probably at least double that many that we do not know about, or that completely failed, were unsuccessful, and we don't even know that they happened. And there could also be some other frame-ups that we haven't yet noticed. So anyway, this Patrick Byrne story, it just sounds to me like another one of the many attempted frame-ups of the Trump campaign, or they're more like entrapment schemes. I guess frame-up is one phrase, but I think more accurate is probably entrapment. So these were like entrapment schemes to entrap Trump, people in his campaign, into some sort of situation that looked like he was colluding with Russians. So this was the whole routine, and we saw it repeated over and over again, beginning with Flynn, going all the way up to this situation with Mr. Byrne. Of course, this was all happening with him in April through July, which is exactly the time frame that all these other things were happening. So it certainly fits in the time frame of all the other attempted frame-ups or attempted setting traps. So this is what it looks like to me. I'll certainly be interested when the Horowitz report comes out, or when maybe some other information comes out, and really shed some more light on what Byrne is talking about. And then there's one other real interesting thing I noticed about these Byrne interviews. On 2 or 3 of these interviews, the one with Cuomo and the one he did with the guy on Fox News, he mentioned in both of those, and another interview as well, that he says that he's seeing the country torn apart. He sees these shootings. He sees this guy drive 600 miles to go somewhere to do a shooting, and I'm thinking, okay, that's kind of going off the where we are. And then he darts back to saying, okay, and that's when I knew I had to come forward. Now, the first time I heard that, I just thought he was kind of like airheaded or whatever, or kind of scatterbrained, and his thoughts are going in a million different directions, and he kind of gets off track, and you have to kind of bring him back. The second time I heard it, I thought, is he suggesting that these shootings have something to do with this group of corrupt people he calls the Men in Black or the Deep State or whatever? And then I heard it a third time, and I thought, obviously he's trying to make a point, because whenever he gets to that point, he stops. He doesn't go any farther. I got to stop right there. And then he'll kind of jump to something else. He can't go beyond that. He mentions these shootings and all this kind of stuff in the context of this frame-up and all this other stuff. Then he leaves that point and jumps to something else. But he says that this is what it made him have to go to Warren Buffett and say, hey, I know some things, and what do you think? And so I find that very interesting that he's citing these shootings and all these other things in the same context of his story, which is that there's this political espionage and stuff going on. So there's some things going on here that are very deep. And I actually believe the guy myself. I believe his story. I don't know that he has the whole story. I think he's got his whole story. But I think there's much, much, much more going on beyond him that he doesn't even know about. As for this idea of they were trying to set up Hillary to blackmail her, well, that certainly wouldn't surprise me. They don't really need to set up Hillary to blackmail her. The very fact that they exonerated her for all of her crimes pertaining to her emails, her server, mishandling classified information, violations of the Espionage Act, lying under oath, destroying evidence, and of course the Uranium One stuff, Clinton Foundation stuff. I mean, they've got a million things that they could use to blackmail the rotten Reverend Clinton. They didn't need to create anything. They had enough, right? So, and I have no doubt that all those people wanted to remain in their jobs. I'm sure Comey wanted to be the FBI director. Brennan wanted to be the CIA director. Clapper wanted to keep his. They all wanted to keep their gigs. And by carrying the water for Hillary and letting her off the hook, They sort of ingratiated themselves to her, and if she did decide that she was going to make a change with any of their positions, they could easily just say, well, Mrs. Clinton, President Clinton, I was certainly hoping to serve in your administration. I'm sorry that you think that there's someone else that you want to replace me with. I perfectly well understand that. Of course, now as a private citizen, I think you should know that I'm probably going to write a book about my time, and I'm probably going to have to mention some of the things that were real important investigations I was involved in, like Uranium One, Clinton Foundation, your email server, mishandling classified information. I'm probably going to have to talk about those things. I may have to go on TV and talk about those things. So I think there's no doubt that they had their kind of own another type of insurance policy for Hillary Clinton if she got elected and decided to remove them from their position and replace them with other people. Certainly Comey, Brennan, Clapper, all these guys, they already would have had enough blackmail information on Hillary to get her to change her mind about making any changes in their positions. So I have no doubt that kind of thing was going on. Beyond that, as far as what Mr. Byrne's talking about, I simply do not know. I hope we find out more. Something else that the Gateway Pundit has a story yesterday, and the story is talking about Mike Rogers, former NSA director. And they show a video clip of the hearings, which I'm sure many of you saw, where he's being questioned about, I think by Lindsey Graham, about FISAs and unmasking and all these things. And he gets to the question on the unmasking, and Graham is really drilling down on exactly what the process is for an unmasking. And so Mike Rogers very meticulously goes through exactly how it works. He said there's 20 different places that you go to get an unmasking. There's 12 different individuals who can authorize that, and I am one of them. He then goes out to lay out the process of an unmasking. And the point of it all is that after you hear his explanation of how things work, if you want to unmask somebody, is that there absolutely is a record of it. And the only person who's given the information from the unmasking is the person who made the request. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that the Flynn-Kislyak phone call that was leaked was unmasked. Somebody had to first unmask the Flynn-Kislyak call before they could leak it to the Washington Post. And with all this time that has gone on, you know that they certainly could have narrowed down and figured out exactly who that was. How many people do you think went to the NSA and said, I want to unmask the other person on this call? That other person would have been Michael Flynn. My guess, it couldn't have been more than one or two or three. And it could have been Sally Yates, it could have been Clapper, it could have been Brennan, could have been Comey. But it was someone in that level, maybe Susan Rice. Very small number of people who could have made that type of request. And whoever did make that request for the unmasking of that call between Flynn and Kislyak, there are documents. Rogers said straight up, there are documents and an entire process we go through. There's no unmaskings done that there aren't a lot of records and information about exactly who, when, why, the whole 9 yards. It should not take, if Horowitz or Barr or Durham or whoever wants to get to the bottom of who actually it was that leaked that Flynn-Kislyak call, that should not be something that should be too difficult to do. If they want to find out who that was, as we found out from this, watching these hearings with Mike Rogers, that is something that's absolutely 100% for certain can be determined. It's like we can't figure it out. Oh, no. We can absolutely figure it out. There is a paper trail of every unmasking. Well, we have Michael Moore having a total meltdown now because it looks like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Ruth Buzzy Ginsburg as I call her, may not make it through the 2020. The type of surgery and cancer she had on her pancreas and I don't wish anything bad on her, but quite honestly, I'm just giving you the facts. The numbers are that it's less than 25% of people who have that type of issue with their pancreas live another 12 months. So she would be beating the odds greatly, and she's already had lung cancer, she's had a stroke, she's had this and that. She's had a lot of problems. She's, 78 or 79 years old. She's got a lot of problems, so I don't wish anything bad on her. I think she should leave the court. I don't think she's any longer capable of carrying out her duties as a Supreme Court judge, but she'll hang in there to her death. She will die as Supreme Court justice, in my opinion. I don't think she'll resign unless she goes into a coma or something like that, and she leaves a power of attorney letter saying if I go into a coma, consider that my resignation. So anyway, yeah, Michael Moore is going apeshit, and now he's telling everyone, you've got to get involved, you've got to start working, you got to do this, you got to do that. But it really doesn't matter. There's just no one in the Democratic field who can beat Trump at this point that I can see. Nobody in the current field can beat Trump. Biden's a front runner. He cannot beat Trump, and I don't think Biden's even going to make it. I don't think Biden's going to be the nominee. I think at this point, the nominee is still probably going to come from somewhere outside the group of people we have now. I think probably, to me, the most obvious person would be the rotten Reverend Clinton. I think she's certainly working behind the scenes to set that up. But never count out Michael Bloomberg. He's got a ton of money. He's in good health. He is a hardcore left winger. He would appeal to a lot of the left wing base. He could energize the Democratic Party more than Hillary even, and he doesn't have to worry about raising money. He's a billionaire, so he could finance his own campaign. So if there's a wild card out there, I think that I really believe at this point Biden is not going to be the nominee, and I don't think there's anyone else in the field that can carry the mantle. I think it's going to have to be someone else who's going to have to throw their hat in the ring. I think the person, to me, most likely who wants to do that is the right Reverend Clinton, but I think that Michael Bloomberg is a guy that's kind of on the wings out there watching very closely, and if Biden goes down, I think that the Bloomberg will probably be the person most people want to turn to. I don't think they'll want to turn to Hillary, but Hillary really doesn't care. I mean, she knows that they don't like her and don't want her. She doesn't really care. Hillary is about what Hillary wants, not what her party wants. Of course, many of you have noticed or caught the news. You know that Mr. Trump, President Trump, is headed to the G7, and I have to say, I watched his press conference before he got on the helicopter to go to the G7, and I'll tell you, man, he had his game face on. Trump has got the game face on, and I saw him when he arrived, and he had that little meeting or a little sitting at the table sort of thing with Macron, and you could tell he totally had his game face on. He's not there to play any bullshit. And this particular G7, they're going to be talking a lot about economics, trade, monetary policy, and you can tell that Trump is loaded for bear. You can tell he is going to raise some hell. He's going to kick a lot of ass. He's going to upset a lot of people, and he's going to lay it out to these Europeans. Exactly what America First is all about. They're not going to like it. They're not going to, he's not going to make any friends at G7, but you can tell that he's got his game face on, and he's ready to raise some hell at G7. So I would say in the aftermath over the weekend, I think the news reports about next week about the G7, I think are going to be very entertaining because I think Trump's going to kick a lot of ass over there in Europe. They're going to know he's a serious man. The Biden gaffe of the day, of course, we have Biden saying that he remembers Kent State very well. I remember Kent State very well, too. I was 8 years old. I live in Ohio, and that event happened at Kent State in 1970. And I was a kid at the time, but I do remember it very well. And, of course, Biden is saying that there were 40 people shot at Kent State. 40. No. There were 13 people who had gunshot wounds, and 4 actually died. 4 dead in Ohio. How can Biden get that wrong when we have this super famous song, 4 dead in Ohio, 4 dead in Ohio? How can you botch that when there's a damn song that tells you how many people were killed at Kent State? And he still gets it wrong. He's a mess. Finally, again, one final thought on this interview with Patrick Byrne. It looks like to me, if I look at what's going on right now, and I see the way things are coming together, it looks like to me that the deep state is getting ready to serve up Comey, McCabe, and Strzok, and maybe a few others in their circle to protect the Right Reverend Clinton and Barack Hussein Obama. It looks like they're going to try to protect the people at the top. They know this thing, they can't protect everybody below them, but it looks like they're going to try to protect the Right Reverend and Obama, and they're going to scapegoat, or they're going to take out Comey, McCabe, Strzok, and all the people in that group. That looks like who's going to pay the price for Spygate. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See ya. Bye.